I've been an active supporter of Palestinian rights and justice for many years, but today I asked if I could speak, not just as a supporter of Palestine, but as a Jewish supporter. I feel it is crucial that people know that there are huge numbers of Jewish people around the world that support the struggle of the Palestinian people for peace and justice, and we need to make our voices heard. In Israel, if you're critical of the government, they call you a self-hating Jew, whatever that means. In this country, if you support Palestine, they call you anti-Semitic. But it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism or being self-hating. It's to do with being critical of what the Israeli state is doing and has been doing for the past 75 years. Jewish people know what oppression is. They have suffered from real anti-Semitism throughout history. My grandparents were forced to leave Lithuania by pogroms. They emigrated to New York, and that's how I got to be a New York Jew brought up in the Bronx. And of course, the Holocaust, the horrific annihilation of 8 million Jews just because they were Jewish. The State of Israel was built as a safe place for Jews after the Holocaust, but it was built by expelling over 750,000 Palestinians from their home and forcing the evacuation of over 500 villages. This can never produce a safe place, and they have carried on taking the land. They want to rid the country of Palestinians. They want to ethnically cleanse the country. They say they want a safe place to live, but all their politics ensure that this is not going to happen. Jewish people have always fought against oppression of others. They were active in the civil rights movement, in the Black Lives Matter movement. They were instrumental in forming some of the early trade unions in New York in the garment industry. Yet when it comes to Israel, there's a blind spot. They say never again, referring to the Holocaust. Of course, we must all say never again, but not by oppressing another people. When I was in Palestine, it just broke my heart to see the humiliations that Palestinians have to go through every single day of their life. I kept thinking, how can a people who have faced so much persecution be so completely cruel to another people? What is heartening is seeing all the specifically Jewish demonstrations that are happening in support of Gaza. People are going on mass demonstrations, but there are many, many specific Jewish demonstrations all over the world. In London, and yeah, but what I find even more inspiring is that they are happening in America. I saw a video of a very large demonstration in New York City, where until just a few years ago, you would never see anything like that. When I was growing up, it went without saying that you just loved Israel. Being in New York is just like being in a little Israel. I still cannot raise the issue of Palestine in my family. They won't listen to anything. But things are changing. In the United States Congress on the 18th of October, about 350 Jewish people, including 24 rabbis, held a sit-in and barricaded themselves in a room in Congress. They were eventually arrested. But things like that bring hope. There is more support for Palestinians than there ever has been before, and Jewish people again are standing up for justice. We are making our voices heard, saying, "Not in my name." I spoke at the rally last week as a PSC activist and as a Jewish supporter of Palestine. After my speech, a young Jewish man came over to me He thanked me and said how my speech resonated with his upbringing, with the dilemmas he faced. Then, during the march, many Palestinians, Syrians, and people from other Arabic countries also came over to me to say thank you for what I said. And it confirmed my belief that it is crucial that the world knows that there are so many Jewish people who are horrified by the genocide they are witnessing. It is very hard to speak about Palestine in a Jewish environment. It's always been very painful to me that I could not discuss my views on Palestine with my family. I was brought up in a house where Israel was totally loved, and that love was so deep and is very deep in many Jewish people's hearts. And this is because of the Holocaust. When I was little, we had a cousin who came to live with us. His name was Usha. He didn't speak much. He was always sad. He had a number tattooed on his arm. I was told, don't ask him anything. Then he committed suicide, and we were never allowed to ask anything about Usha again, but it certainly affected me. As I grew up, I started to question what was going on in Israel, but I was still never able to raise anything with my family, not then and not now. And when I went to Palestine a year ago and saw the oppression firsthand and was so moved, I decided, right, now's the time I must try to talk to my family. I've seen things with my own eyes. They can't deny my reality. And I tried, and it totally failed. Many people, many Jewish people just don't want to know the other side. Jewish people feel that because of the Holocaust, we have to support Israel, because 6 million Jews were killed. Well, Jews know what genocide is. So how can the state of Israel be committing genocide against the Palestinians? Israel's killed over 7,000 Palestinians in just 2 weeks, over 3,000 of them being children. Yesterday, they cut Gaza off completely, the internet, and those are the things I was mentioning before. But I want to move on to talking about the accusation of anti-Semitism, because it's very important. When we first heard this accusation a few years back, we discussed it in PSC, and we said, it won't go anywhere. Well, how wrong we were. Politicians have been using it as a tool ever since. They've been using it as a tool to rally support for Israel. They want a strong ally in the Middle East. So they equate any criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. This is extremely dangerous. Not only does it stop open political debate, but it obscures real anti-Semitism, which goes on. Because anti-Semitism is completely different than criticizing the policies of Israel, a state that was built by forcing over 750,000 Palestinians from their home. How can we not have the right to criticize a state's policies? We criticize all sorts of states' policies, but not Israel. Anti-Semitism was a very useful tool to bring Jeremy Corbyn down. It was a useful tool to get rid of opposition in the Labour Party, even though so many of those expelled were Jewish. It's a tool that's meant to silence us, but we must not be silenced. We must shout. We must speak out for justice and freedom for Palestinians and an end to genocide. Since last week, there have been so many more Jewish demonstrations all across the world. And I just want to talk about one American organization, because obviously it's both close to my heart being an American. Also, there was no way you could be in opposition a few years back. And now Jewish Voices in America are standing up. There's an organization called Jewish Voices for Peace, and I really recommend you look them up on the internet, because they are organizing all over the country, and this brings hope. Jewish people are once again standing up for justice and calling for an end to bombing, an end to ethnic cleansing, and an end to the brutal occupation, and an end to genocide. we are making our voices heard, saying, "Not in my name."
I didn't know I was on the speakers list because I'm going in to ask a question at the council meeting. So I was a bit shocked when I saw my name there. But I also feel really strongly that there has to be a Jewish voice on all of these demonstrations. Of course, it's most important that we hear the Palestinian voice, but people must know that there are Jewish people all over the world who are protesting about this horrible genocide. The reason I think it's so important, so many people have come over to me afterwards and said, "Thank you for saying that. You're speaking from your heart," which I certainly am, from my experience of growing up, which I have mentioned on the demonstrations before. But Jewish people have always stood on the side of the oppressed, always, and I've been proud of that. Active in the civil rights movement, active in the trade union movement, active over the years on the side of the oppressed. And for some reason, well, I know the reason, but they're blinded by Israel. They look at me and say, "How can you be saying that?" Well, I am saying it, and I'm saying it loud and clear. The Holocaust is not an excuse to create another Holocaust. You will never have a safe place for Jews when you are oppressing another people. You have got to give equal rights to Palestinians. We're not saying destroy Jewish, certainly not saying destroy Jewish people. We're saying we want equal rights for people. We want an end to injustice. This seems a very reasonable thing to be asking for. And the last thing I want to say is I'm so inspired by the Jewish protests that are going on around the world. And in particular, I'm going to mention the one I mentioned on Saturday, the Jewish Voice for Peace in America. They are amazing. They are young. They are not frightened of anything. And they took over Grand Central Station. It is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to finish by saying the same thing that I said on the other 2 demonstrations that I spoke in, "Not in my name."